How's it going, everybody? Thank you very much. I always appreciate you watching. I'm Orlando Ruiz Jr. Welcome to my ninth classic horror movie review for this October 2024. I am talking about a movie that came out back in 1986, a sequel to not just one of the greatest horror movies of all time, not just one of the great independent film success stories of all time, but one of the greatest movies of all time, really, with the original film in this series, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a movie that probably didn't need a sequel, but we ended up getting a whole bunch of them, some of them not so great, but at least we got this film right here because for me, it's worth having all the crappier movies that came after. I'm just happy that we got this one. So, yeah, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, one of my all time favorite sequels, period. I imagine a lot of hardcore fans sitting in that dark theater around other people and just feeling really nervous about seeing a sequel to maybe one of their favorite movies, and so maybe they're a bit on the gatekeepery side, sitting there with their arms crossed, just saying to themselves, man, they better not fuck it up. They better not mess this movie up, or else I'm going to riot. And I also imagine that camp of fans that were sitting there just really, really excited to see another Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie from Tobe Hooper, who, after all, kept busy between movies, making movies like Poltergeist and the Salem's Lot miniseries before that. Like a lot of sequels, this movie is derivative of a lot of things that we saw in the original movie. Girl gets trapped in the Sawyer house, Leatherface comes out eventually with the chainsaw and waves it around, and the Sawyer family is chasing her around the house, and there's a lot of screaming going on. So, hits a lot of the same kind of familiar beats. Only this movie feels nothing like the original. The original is shot almost like a documentary and feels very kind of gritty in terms of its execution, and really adds to a lot of the scare factor in that first movie. They don't just up the gore. Tobe Hooper adds more humor to this one. There's more camp. There's a lot more fun. And you even got a big star in this one with the great Dennis Hopper, an actor that goes way back, appearing in John Wayne movies like True Grit, and he was also in Sons of Katie Elder, and he was also in James Dean movies like Rebel Without a Cause, and appears in Giant, and of course Easy Rider, his masterpiece from 1969. And of course, he always made a great bad guy in movies like Waterworld and Speed, and one of my personal favorite movies, Red Rock West, a very underrated flick, which I will get to eventually. But yeah, I love Dennis Hopper. I was very sad to hear when he passed away. The guy had one of the all-time greatest acting moments ever in True Romance, in a masterclass scene with Christopher Walken. So that guy is definitely missed on the big screen. This movie has a very fun and memorable opening scene with a couple of yuppie youngsters tearing down a secluded highway in Texas, shooting at mailboxes and signs, causing trouble. They're listening to music on the radio and listening to Stretch, played by Caroline Williams, and they call her up, and for some reason they're like just messing with her, and she can't hang up for some reason. I don't know how that works. Somebody please tell me how come Stretch couldn't hang up the phone. With these two guys in the convertible acting like idiots and messing around on the road, and at one point even playing chicken with somebody in the oncoming lane, and just being real dickheads on the phone with Stretch on the radio. This being a horror movie, these two assholes are going to get it very badly, very soon. And before you know it, a truck shows up on this never ending freaking bridge that seems to go on and on forever. And then we get some pretty sweet chainsaw action, baby. These two guys die gruesomely on the airwaves, and Stretch records the audio of the whole thing on a tape. And because she reads about Lefty investigating this whole thing in the paper, she goes to see Lefty, Dennis Hopper's character, at his hotel. But Lefty doesn't want any interference, and so he kind of just shoos her away. It's really fun to see Hopper, a guy that played a lot of bad guys, play this kind of a role where he's like this guy with a quest for vengeance, and he has zero fucks to give, because even though he knows how dangerous his opposition is, what he's going up against, he has no fear whatsoever. He is completely batshit nuts when he goes up against the Sawyers, and he's running around their house wielding double chainsaws like a friggin' maniac. Coming back from the first movie as the head of the Sawyer household, reprising his role as Drayton Sawyer, actor James Sidow, who was a little bit more scarier in the first movie because he played it a bit more straight. This one he's a bit more over the top with the humor and really hams it up, a lot more campier with his performance. The first movie, his performance was right for that movie, but for this movie, he is perfect in terms of what this movie requires, because this movie is batshit nuts. The whole thing is over the top with a gore, with all the other supporting actors like other members of the Sawyer family. They all kind of got to match each other's level of energy, and so he's great at keeping up with Bill Moseley, Chop Top's character. Chop Top is, by the way, the standout character. He's the scariest character in the film, even though you got a movie with Leatherface in it who is wielding a chainsaw. But Chop Top is creepy as fuck. In the horror community, Bill Moseley is a much-loved character actor and horror icon, appearing in the 1990 Tom Savini Night of the Living Dead remake as the brother of Barbara that kept saying, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." And of course, we all remember him as Otis from Rob Zombie's Firefly trilogy, House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, Three from Hell. Chop Top is creepy as hell. He's very disturbing in terms of his behavior, especially when he takes his lighter out and lights the tip of a metal hanger and takes that tip when it's really hot and starts using it to scratch his scalp because he has a metal plate on his head from an old NAM injury, and he covers it up with a Sonny Bono wig. And he's constantly taking that lighter, lighting it up, scratching that scalp. Then he takes a little bit off the scalps, little tiny little bits, and he starts putting them in his mouth and eats them. It's actually really gross when he does that and a bit disturbing, but I think that's the whole point behind a movie like this. The filmmakers are obviously trying to get under our skin and have all these awful images seared into our brain with all the gross makeup effects and the crazy over the top gore, which I think can be interpreted a number of different ways, but I'm sure some people will find some of the gory moments so over the top to the point where they're kind of comedic. I know for me, watching this at home back in the day for the first time when I was like 11 years old really felt like a rite of passage by the time the movie was over. And I don't think I would have been able to get through it if it wasn't for watching like Nightmare on Elm Street prior to this and Friday the 13th movies and Child's Play movies. Let's talk about Leatherface in this movie. I think actor Bill Johnson did a very good job of stepping into Gunnar Hansen's shoes and playing the character. And for the version that they wanted for this movie, I think this version works well for what they were going for this movie. But I personally prefer the Leatherface, Gunnar Hansen's Leatherface in the original film, just because that Leatherface was definitely scarier to me. I think he was a bit more mysterious, and this Leatherface is a bit more comedic, I guess, the way it's portrayed. He's a bit more sentimental. He is a bit more on the horny side. And yeah, I just really kind of prefer the more mysterious, kind of creepier, just all about chainsawing you and hanging you on the hook Leatherface. That one was not messing around. Now let's talk about our final girl. As much as I do like and I do appreciate Marilyn Burns' performance in the first film as Sally Hardesty, I personally prefer the character of Stretch, and I just like Carolyn Williams a bit more. And it's not Marilyn Burns' fault. Her character wasn't given that much dialogue. Like Stretch gets way more dialogue. She gets way more character in terms of like more attitude, and she just has a bit more of a badass girl quality to her. For all the haters out there and all the critics that say slasher movies are garbage because they don't have any character development whatsoever, bullshit. Check out the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and look at Carolyn Williams as Stretch. She's awesome in this movie, and by the end of the film, she is not the same person that she starts out as at the beginning. By the time it's over, she is a changed fucking woman, and you can see it in her eyes when she's twirling around with the chainsaw, doing the dance and swirling around and, moving that thing in the air. She is vibing with that thing. Because I really enjoy the character of Stretch, I always appreciate when Caroline Williams pops up in something. Like, you can see her very briefly in a blink or you'll miss it moment in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, also in Gremlins 2 The New Batch, where there's that scene where they're having the discussion of what if they're in an airplane and they're eating and they cross the time zone and then the gremlin comes out of the control panel. Yeah, she's in that scene as well. She's also, I believe, in 2015's Tales of Halloween in a small part in one of those segments, and also very good in Leprechaun 3 in a role where she plays this woman that thinks she's a bit overweight, so she makes a wish at one point and gets the body that she wants, but it's at a price, of course. And I also appreciate some Leprechaun every now and then. And the last thing I want to leave you all regarding this flick is this movie just happens to feature one of the best horror movie soundtracks of the 80s out there, featuring songs like Goo Goo Muck from the Cramps. You got Oingo Boingo's No One Lives Forever. You got a killer tune from the Lords of the New Church. Songs that would fit in very nicely with that Halloween party playlist. For me, the only sequel that really gets it right, besides the 2003 remake, is 1986's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. You got memorable characters, you got a kick-ass soundtrack, you got a very inventive and creative kind of set design with where the Sawyers are holding up, which looks like it was heavily influential for Rob Zombie when you take a look at House of a Thousand Corpses. You got very twisted, wicked humor all throughout this movie. You got the over-the-top violence. You got Dennis Hopper in there. You got one of the great 1980s badass final girls with the character of Stretch. And overall, one of the great 1980s slasher movies, 1986's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I give this movie 3.5 stars. Since I am a physical media freak, you know I'm going to have a copy of this movie for myself, but I gotta be honest, even though I do have the Blu-ray, I'm not a fan of this cover that they have. This is not the original poster. The original poster had the family, the Sawyer family, posing like they were the Brat Pack from the Breakfast Club. Thank you all very much for watching this classic movie review. I very much appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, if you're into this kind of thing, if you're into the classics, hit the bell, become a subscriber. I understand that about 60% of you guys that watch aren't subscribed, which, is okay. If I'm not for you, that's cool. Move on. But for those of you that, do kind of dig it and do want to watch, subscribe and hit the, share and like and all that stuff. Please look out for my 10th and final classic horror movie review coming out on the evening of the 31st. And until then, I hope you all stay safe, take care of each other, peace out, and happy Halloween.